Okay, we'll have a short round of introductions, of course. Let's start with Edie. I'm sorry, ladies first. Edie Rodriguez.
No worries. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Fredrik, for inviting me to be here today. Thank you to my co-panelists, and thank you as well to all the viewers. I wish everybody good health and wellness. Obviously, I've had a long career in this wonderful industry, and I'm very bullish on the industry, perhaps more so 3 years from now post a vaccine. But in the interim, these are challenging times that we'll all get through together. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Julian, would you like to come next?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Again, thank you for inviting me to attend this. So my name's Julian Hughes. I work for V-Ships Leisure in Southampton. I'm head of ship management there. We manage currently in Southampton the Saga fleet. I've been with V-Ships Leisure for 3 years now. Prior to that, I was an independent consultant, technical assessor for UCAS, and expert witness for hull and machinery claims. Prior to that, I was 7 years shoreside with Carnival UK in various roles up to fleet technical director, and 18 years at sea prior to that, in various engineering roles on board P&O and Princess. So I've been in the cruise industry for 32 years now.
Thank you, Julian. We're going to ask you a lot of in-depth questions about operations and efficiency on board. Okay, thank you. We have Johannes Lindthaler from Marine Exchange.
Very good afternoon or good morning to all of you. Thank you for joining us today for this session. I started Marine Exchange 20 years ago, and we enhanced our enterprise platform with many important features to allow cruise lines to resume sailing and gain back the confidence of the crew and passengers and the health authorities in their respective countries. So I'm looking forward to show you more of what functionality we have added to our enterprise suite.
Great, thank you. That's wonderful. So then we will. We have a couple of presentations that we want to show you. One from one video from Marine Exchange, and also a PowerPoint presentation. But we'll come back to that. We are going straight into the offer. The very reason for cruising in the first place is really the opposite of social distancing. So it's a luxurious experience that you have together, obviously, with your friends and loved ones. So we wanted to pass the first question to you, Edie. You spent your life dealing with and experiencing luxury traveling. So being a real expert here in the group, I think, from your perspective, how can we, and can we turn this whole situation into something positive? And how would we even improve the guest experience following this whole period?
Well, I believe in the power of positivity, and I think every challenge brings a great opportunity for positivity. So in that regard, to answer your question, I think the short answer is yes. And then the longer version of that is history is a great teacher. And if we look at history and we look at previous situations like this, the Spanish flu, if you will, of 1917, these things take a long time to cycle through. And sadly, many people will get ill, some will survive, some will not, but it will cycle through, and hopefully there will be a vaccine. And typically, historically, when these kinds of situations have occurred, it was a great period of invention post the challenge. And I think that's exactly what's happening here. And certainly in the 1917 example, we went into the roaring 20s, and it was a very dynamic, great decade, similar to post the global economic meltdown of 2008, different causal chain. But nonetheless, it will come back. And when it comes back, hopefully it will be an even more luxurious, better experience than ever before. But how do you address it in the interim? There are a lot of ways, and we're going to hear from the wonderful co-panelists today some of the things each of their companies are doing. It's about really embracing technology, What is the latest technology, and how can you make that and tailor that and apply that to this quote unquote new normal, so that the guest experience can be as contactless as possible, and concurrent to that, what new features can you bring in? But the enemy here is health and life and survival. So the bigger challenge, because everything is doable with enough money, that's the big problem. It's going to be very expensive to implement these protocols, both the technological aspects and then the operational aspects. And so when you're doing all of that, the cruise ship operator is going to have to spend a lot more money, which means the guest is going to have to spend a lot more money. And then when you talk about the socialization, as you pointed out in your question, Fredrik, when you come to cruising, it's about that socialization. It's about gathering closely with loved ones, not 6 feet apart. It's about sitting at the pool with the cocktail, not wearing a mask, having dinner, making new friends that you don't know where they've been. And so all of these things are doable and fixable on board and even off the ship in the off-ship shore excursion experience. But the bottom line is you can harness all the power of technology, and there are great technologies there to help, but the costs are going to go up. So then the biggest challenge for the cruise industry that was projecting pre-pandemic in 2020, 32 million global guests. Obviously, that's not going to happen as the industry pauses in 2020. But as it comes back, one of the biggest challenges always was attracting first-time cruisers. So now with these new COVID challenges and sadly the negative press that has ensued, it's going to be an even bigger challenge to attract first to cruising. And there are those that love cruising and will come back. But in the new normal, there's going to be less people on board, and that means the social experience is going to be different because of social distancing, because of dining 6 feet apart, et cetera, et cetera. So what is that experience going to be like? And it's going to be a very individualized thing. I know in my own world, I always love to go out to eat and shopping. In this new normal, having to wear a mask and sit 6 feet apart from the next table, and I don't enjoy it. It's a completely different experience. It doesn't mean it can't get enhanced and get better, particularly as each of our individual paradigms acclimate to accepting this new normal. But it will be a challenge. Having said that, I do believe when a vaccine comes out and when all of these new protocols are implemented, it's a blessing in disguise for the industry, because I think it will be a more sustainable, eco-friendly environment on the ship and off the ship, and concurrent to that, a healthier experience. And everybody cares about health, wellness, and sustainability. So I think the best is yet to come, but it will be a challenging 3 years till a vaccine and people acclimate. Thank you.
Okay, that's really great. Thank you, Edie. Lots of high density thoughts there. So very, very interesting, very intriguing. Which brings us, a lot of this is relating to the very business case, of course, of the whole industry. We know that the hospitality industry is a very labor-intense industry, and with these new safety regulations, maybe even more so. So, I mean, long term, I guess we have to assume that we need to reduce the number of guests on board, maybe not cut in half, as some people have said and done temporarily, but let's just assume that we will have to have 20% less people on board, and we have to counter, having 20% more crew on board to serve by the table instead of having buffets, to help maintaining social distancing and cleaning the ship and so forth. This whole new kind of situation is obviously going to change the whole business model of cruising and operating the ships and running a cruise brand. So a question to you, Julian, what do you think will be the prime actions to bring efficiency and profitability back up, without sacrificing the guest experience?
So I think, as with Edie, it's about sort of focusing on the positives. So there will be different offerings, and I think the key thing is a lot of the work that's being done in the background, as she says, with regard to air quality and the health side of things, will, in the long term, certainly benefit the industry. I think in the short term, there is, as we've said, going to be a decline in profitability and people traveling on board. The way in which the ships are going to operate, I think everybody's accepting with reduced numbers. We have to, from a social distancing point of view, to put these measures in place. And as things change, hopefully the capacities will increase. So I think for me, it's about focusing on the positives, maybe a more personalized experience. It may be that dining on balconies, dining in areas is a more personalized experience, and that may appeal. But I think the main thing is getting the confidence of the guests back in that the ships are already very safe environments. You know, we work to extremely high standards. We are certainly audited and inspected with regard to that. And I think we can build on that. They will be safer and certainly will be stronger moving forward. So it's about, for me, I think it's getting that consumer confidence back, assuring the guests that they are in an even safer environment than they were in before. And certainly when we look as a comparison to shore, there are some metrics we could draw there. And I think we fare very highly against them, as we always have done in the past. So that's where I think it'd be. I think understanding how this will move forward as technology testing and these things become available on board will certainly assist us. And certainly I think the challenges around shore exit and embarkation and things like that will be certainly assisted by that and the numbers we can put on board.
We had tenant partners in our with some strange background noise here. Does anybody have a microphone that you could switch off in the meantime? Thank you. We had tenant partners in our first webinar who deal a lot with brand management and rebuilding confidence and trust in companies and industries, and they from their perspective it was very much about that, rebuilding the trust, and so maybe it's almost just as much that we regain and rebuild the trust in people, you know, being willing to come on board and spend their money on board. And that's going to be a big part of our job into the future, I guess. So going back to a little bit more on the let's say operational and efficiency aspect of the ships. Hannes, a question for you. One thing we've spoken about for many years is what we call the 25% effect. In essence, you're moving 20 people around on about 25% of the ship at all times. You know, in the mornings you have everybody in the buffet restaurants, and they all move out to the open decks, and then they move to the main dining area, and then they move to the open deck again. So we have, you know, wherever you go, it's either completely empty or it's full of people. So from your perspective, how can we use the ship more effectively and spread people more evenly over the ship, you know, throughout the day and over time, thereby, you know, improving social distancing and also using the ship more effectively? Can we use technology, or is there anything in your area of expertise that we can benefit from?
There's two things that need to happen. One is planning, and the other one is technology. Obviously, the ship's programming is geared towards maximizing the guest experience and onboard revenue. And going forward, capacity control will be really important, or controlling crowd capacities. And what we will see is, in order to have the distance that is required in a restaurant, the restaurant will be open longer. It will open earlier, it will close later, because it can only take so many guests at any given time. The same goes for lounges, for events, for shows, all the public rooms. So the programming on the ship needs to change to provide activities throughout the ship to spread out the guests. So this is definitely one of the things that we will see happening, because guests go to wherever it's interesting. One thing we will also see is much more use of mobile technology on the guest side and the crew side. The guests will they bring their own device solutions. The cruise lines use will be enhanced to allow guests to do more self-service, to order food to their cabin. Julian mentioned the balcony earlier. To allow guests to do things without having to walk to a tour desk, without having to go to the concierge, without having to go to reception. A lot of these things are already in place. And what we've seen on land now, I have 2 kids in school, and obviously they were in homeschooling for 2 months now, driving my wife crazy. That the schools adapted to digital teaching. And we could see an acceleration of the use of mobile technology. And the same will happen with cruise ships or in the hospitality industry in general, that the guests will be much more likely to be asked by the operator, by the cruise line, by the hotel, to download the app and to do things on their own, like the check-in, taking their own picture, scanning their own passport, and doing certain things on board, like looking at the menu. So there's no more paper menus. You just scan a QR code and it brings up the menu on your mobile device. Ticketless shore excursions, basically eliminate paper. Whatever you can touch, whatever you touch to transfer the virus, it needs to be eliminated. Mm-hmm. So if it's tour tickets, if it's POS checks, if it's paper questionnaires, all of this will disappear. And crowd control or capacity control, most modern ships have digital signage. You know, they have between 100 and 200 TVs mounted throughout the ship. And of course, today you have to navigate them touching them. So we probably see some new functionality there as well, but I think primarily will be the guest zone mobile app to be used. And the mobile app will be able to show, you know, what events are happening, what is already booked, what vacancies are still available. Because one thing you want to also prevent is having, you know, crowds of people wandering through the ship, trying to participate somewhere just to get to the venue and see it's full and there's a queue. So mobile technology can be used to direct traffic flow, and so guests do not go somewhere where there's no more chance of getting in. We will see a much higher rate of reservations being required. So you will have to actually sign up for things ahead of time in order to do the load balancing. We call it load balancing in operations. You know, a restaurant, when you open a restaurant for pre-booking, you give each waiter every 15 minutes a table. So this way you don't overwhelm the waiter for getting too many people at the same time. And you also allow the kitchen or the galley to cope with the number of guests entering in the restaurant. So mobile technology will very much assist the cruise lines to fulfill those requirements with crowd capacity, with the distancing rules, with directing traffic flow in a way that guests spread out all of the ship fairly evenly, with going away from paper. So these are all things that technology will very much be able to assist. Some of this already exists, or most of it actually exists already. And whatever didn't exist, we're now adding to our own suite of applications. Fortunately, there's many cruise ships already having some of those modules in place. So for them to get this new functionality is quite easy, since all they do is get an upgrade. And then one important part is, of course, is now to train the crew on all its new processes. So, and technology can be used for this too. You know, you look at e-learning tools, and allow crew, whilst they're waiting at home to come back to the ships, to already expose them to trainings programs that outline all of these new processes. So when they come back on the ship, they're already familiar. Okay, those are all the new things we have to do now. So this is an important aspect as well, is training of the crew.
Okay. That's really interesting. I know you had a presentation, you wanted to show a few examples already. I think we'll there's one slideshow and a short movie. Would you like to take us through the slides at this time?
Okay, let me just fire this up and make sure it works. So can you see the screen?
Yes, we can. And for those of you who have logged in, I think if you're using WebEx, there is a zoom in tool on the left hand of the screen where you can press the magnifying tool there. You can get almost like a full screen. There is actually a full screen command as well. Okay. Thank you, Hannes. Take it away.
So I don't want to take too much time, so may skip over some of the slides. Who are we? My background is cruise industry. I'm an operations guy. I worked on ships for many years. I worked in offices for quite a few years, in operations, in new builds. And I started this company 20 years ago to bring enterprise software to the cruise industry that's specifically made for the cruise industry. So this is important. We have 34 cruise lines today as clients. You see the logos here. And so what will change? New processes, embarkation, disembarkation, tours, meals, events, all of this will change. Use of mobile technology, as I mentioned before, going paperless, very important. Controlling crowd capacity is very important. Allow our guests to use their mobile devices. Even if before Corona, we may have frowned upon an idea asking a guest, well, use your own mobile phone to look at the menu and tell the waiter what would you like. It's not 5-star plus by no means, but it's an option. Rather than having one menu that's passed around being thrown away, which is not very green, it's definitely a possibility. Use of facial recognition. Touchless is very important. Wherever I need to avoid touch, I need to be able to do extensive logging. And extensive logging from a cleaning point of view, rapid tests, once they become available and they're accurate enough, temperature readings, guest movements, that's, contact tracing is the new big term that the German government, I happen to live in Munich in Germany, and the German government teamed up with SAP and Telecom to create this contact tracing app. And they did a good job, I have to say. There was a lot of discussion, especially in Europe, about privacy laws and all of these things. But, at the end of the day, if you want to resume some kind of normality, we just need to make some compromises for a little time, for a year or two. And I think most people will be pragmatic about it and say, yes, if this helps to stay safe, well, you know what, let's do that. And then, as I mentioned just before, the training of the crew. This is super important. The crew members really need to be trained before they come back on the ship, because once they come back, it's really busy. They have to go through many trainings programs, and this is another one they have to go through. So this is super important. Now, what we have done is, let me just jump to it. We have gone through all of our mobile applications, say where can we actually add functionality. So at a gangway or a security checkpoint, we can already use now thermal scanning with facial recognition technology to see if there's a guest which has increased temperature, which will be taken aside, then further examined by a medical professional of the ship staff. Check-in app, enhanced screening, health screening, what specific health questionnaires, collection of health certificates, for example. Logging, super important. How often do we have to clean certain areas? And we have to prove this. The crews don't have to keep logs. Rapid tests, temperature readings, all this process CDC puts in place, or the German government, or the French government, or the Norwegian government, they need to prove they're actually complying with those regulations. So logging, electronic logging is important. The management of medical and health documents. Anybody above a certain age, like 65 years old, are considered, at a more risk. If they have pre-existing conditions, maybe their doctor has to give them a certificate saying you are fit to travel, or no, sorry, you can't. So cruise lines may start requiring some of this documentation from guests. Housekeeping. once a guest, there's a suspicion that a guest or a crew member is infected, or there's a proof of it, this person needs to be quarantined to their cabin. So we added functionality to make sure everybody's aware there's somebody confined to their cabin. One should not just enter it if it's for a repair request or room service request. So obviously they need to get food, but the person that does the room service needs to be aware, okay, this cabin is, this person is confined. We need to now have a different procedure, how to deliver food, how to pick up dishes from a previous meal. So these, again, mobile applications will really help managing this efficiently. Menus in restaurants or the whole point of sales process. We are talking to all our clients. Some of them already have our mobile POS solution. To not have to collect the key card, because the traditional process is I collect the key card, I collect the gift card, I walk over to a POS terminal, I swipe it, I ring up the check, and this is the ordering process. When they pay, the same thing again. And so we want to eliminate this completely. And early on, there was a discussion about how can a cruise line return to profitability? The break-even point is somewhere around 85% full fare. The fixed costs of the ship, the fuel costs, all of these are kind of, there's not much leeway you do have. Where you have some leeway is crew payroll, but at the same time, we have less passengers, we need more crew maybe because of these new processes. Mobile technology does help to reduce some payroll because I become more efficient. I can go to more self-service. So there is some potential for using in some areas less crew members to perform the same level of standard, the same level of service as guests are used to. On the HR side, manage pre-existing conditions. Again, it's almost like crew members are almost like passengers, but it's the scheduling, for example, not to turnarounds, crew changes in ports that are maybe risky. So we need to consider travel restrictions. We need to consider new flights that the airlines, there's much less flights now. So there's a lot of things that you have to consider on the human resources side as well. Electronic learning, I mentioned this before. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. I'm afraid I have to stop you there, Johannes. There's so much interesting in here, but we need to move on a little bit in the topics. But this is these presentations will be available to everybody listening. So I'm sorry for this, Julian, but I'd like to take depart from what you're showing us here and ask Edie a couple of questions. Let's say that it may be a generational thing. It may be an experiential thing also, that some of these the digital solutions may not be 5-star plus or above. It may be that some people go for a digital detox when they go on a cruise and so forth. How do you look at this, the technology versus let's say an authentic guest experience, and a luxury guest experience on board?
Sure. Well, first, I think Johannes, if time permits, should show his video, because I think it's very germane to this topic and it's an excellent video. But to answer your question, I always say luxury is a very individual thing. It's a term like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. It means different things to different people. And what is a luxurious experience to me is a very different luxurious experience to perhaps my husband or people we're traveling with. And so I think it goes back to what I said earlier. It's that mindset that you are, as a modern person, accepting these new rules of engagement. What we knew before, temporarily, we sort of have to throw out and say, this is how it is. When I sit at a restaurant, the waiter is going to be wearing a mask and gloves. And to the point Johannes said, you're going to have perhaps ordered already on your own personal mobile device. Is that really luxury? One thing we can't forget in all of this, because our humanness requires, luxury or not luxury, to interact with other people, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. It is still about that smile, if you will. Even if you've ordered in your stateroom on your mobile device and now you're going to the restaurant at 8 p.m. because that's your assigned time. when now the eyes are going to be more important than ever, because what was always a smile to warm people's hearts is now going to be hidden behind a mask, if you will. So it really is about what I said earlier, finding that new set of client guests that will come on board and accept that this is the new luxury, and the new luxury is not what they may have perceived before. But it is also about options and making sure that each individual on board can do and can achieve in that vacation experience what they're looking for. And if it is a digital detox, it's certainly going to be much more challenging than the way the new normal will be. But I still say that there are a lot of people that will come and accept it because they want to get away. And since we've all been under, as I endearingly call it, house arrest, there is clearly pent-up demand. So how do you convince a potential traveler, luxury or otherwise, that coming on this cruise experience is better than getting in a rental car and driving to the destination and doing, a more private type vacation experience? So the marketers in the cruise industry are going to be more challenged, but it's all doable. And it really is a matter of acceptance. How can that guest that just paid a lot of money, more money than they paid before because the cruise line's costs are going up, to accept that I'm paying more and this is what I'm getting? That personal service is more technologically advanced than, the human touch. But I think we'll all survive, thrive, and get through it. And certainly, as I said earlier, when a vaccine comes, it will help.
Maybe that means a greater differentiation in the future, that people who wanted a digital detox or are prepared to pay for that personal service, they will go to a certain brand and the rest will go to other brands. So, maybe that's the outcome of this. Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you, Edie. Back to you, Johansson.
Thank you, Fredrik.
You had an intriguing video you wanted to show us about improving the safety on board with some technical innovation.
Please get close for taking temperature. Normal temperature. Normal temperature. Please get close for taking temperature. Abnormal temperature. Normal temperature. Please wear a mask. Please get close for taking temperature. Abnormal temperature. Please get close for taking temperature. Normal temperature.
Well, thank you for showing that. Just a quick word. This was thermal imaging and facial recognition, and it was different use cases where a face was recognized or not recognized, where a mask was required or not required. And I see there was a question on the chat panel here. If a closed circuit TV system that's already on a ship can be used for thermal imaging. And if you allow me, I could quickly answer that, because we did some extensive research on the different technologies that are available. And there is there's only really two technologies we found. One is the one which you saw in the video, which is the more economical. It actually happens to be more accurate simply by because the guest or the person standing very close to it. And the wavelengths of the infrared temperature reading is optimized for accurate temperature readings of a face. If you use a system that's sometimes used at airports, which can capture 10, 15 people at the same time, and puts a little rectangle around the face, those are actually less accurate, and they cost somewhere starting at €10,000 a piece. So they are not, from the feedback we received from the manufacturers, they actually they are very good for large crowds. They are not so good for where you have a single line like a gangway or entering a dining room. So they are a device that we saw in the video is much more suitable. And furthermore, psychologically, I think it's good for the guests to see these devices because they're quite, obviously they're quite visible. And they have the feeling, they get reminded every time they step in front of one of them is to say, okay, the cruise line is doing something for our safety. Mm-hmm. Where else, if you have cameras mounted somewhere hidden, they're not visible. Passengers don't see them. They want to be reminded and reinforced in their opinion, saying, yes, a lot of things are being done. And many things are behind the scenes, many processes they never get to see. So this is one of the most visible, or maybe the most visible process they can actually see throughout the ship. So just to answer this question, closed circuit TV system, as that our findings, we didn't find anything really suitable that would work with that. However, there may be solutions out there. None of our clients that we talked to actually, and they looked at that, communicated to us, they actually found something like that. So they pretty much now are shifting to this device. I know one of the cruise lines is still looking at the camera used at the airports, but that's on the standalone. In the laptop, it's a much more elaborate setup, and it's much, much more expensive. So you cannot really afford to put 10 of them around the ship. It just would be not economical.
I see, and I guess it's going to require a lot of crew training and getting used to understanding the new system so that they are fully operational and safe to use, and that they are actually doing their job, so to say. On that note, so thank you very much, Johannes. Sure. On that note, we will.
And if I could just add to something Johannes said, I mean, if you go into a hospital today or for a medical office, I had to go for a checkup, and the hospital is doing this today. People walk, and it's everywhere. It's just a new acceptance. You can't get into a building unless you're wearing a mask. They're sanitizing your hands as you're walking past the same type of setup that his video showed. But to his point about in the consumer/guest's mind, they want to know, people want to know today what is being done. So really the onus is on the cruise line to communicate that via videos, via documentation, pre-boarding, obviously in the sales process, on their websites, showing videos. This is what our cruise line is doing to ensure your safety when you come on board, and just keep reiterating that message. So the same way when you come on board, you'll see a video for safety. You're now going to have to see a video to show these are all of our policies and procedures and measures we have implemented on the ship and off the ship in a COVID world to at least let the guests feel better, more comfortable, safer, but concurrently have to put, in my humble opinion, in that video, and by the way, guests, luxury, non-luxury, the onus is also on you to do the right thing. We ask that you wear your mask. We ask that you wash your hands frequently. We ask that you take advantage of, the antibacterial hand sanitizers that are throughout. And everybody is going to have to get into that new mindset. And it's challenging. I have to tell you, I am a creature of habit. I go to Starbucks to buy my Starbucks, and then I typically go to the grocery store. They're next door to each other. Well, previously, I would be sipping my Starbucks as I was in the grocery store. I can't do that anymore because the other people in the grocery store look at me like they want to kill me if I try to sneak lifting my mask for a sip. So life and habits that we're used to, something as simple as drinking in public, has now changed. But video and websites are a great way to communicate this. And it's important, I think, to communicate it in advance, because then the guests can make the decision. Is that going to be acceptable to me on board and off the ship? Am I willing to follow those rules of engagement? If I am, great, this may be the cruise option for me. If I'm not, maybe I better stay home and go on, you know, a car trip. Thank you.
Thank you, Edie. That's really great. And I guess there will be people on board reminding you if you're not doing the things you should. There'll be maybe on the high-end ships, there'll be people reminding you, and on the more mass market ships, there'll be technology reminding you. So who knows? Anyway, there will be probably more crew on board. And Julian, you had a little set of information and advice that you wanted to show us as well from your experience and background from ship operations. Are you okay with sharing that with us right now?
Yeah, so it was more an overview of what we do as V Group and V Ships Leisure and how we support the guests and also our customers in giving that guest experience. So yep, I can show that now.
Yes, and then Corbin, we need to make Julian the presenter. Great.
So everybody can see that?
Yes, that's clear.
Okay, so the V Ships Leisure, it's just that I'll make this as quick as I can. So it's going to go through who we are, what we do, and why we feel us, and what we do for our clients, which are the owners and operators of the cruise lines, and ultimately the guests and the crew on board. So V Group's the largest leader in ship management and marine services. We operate around the clock, around the world, and we partner with our clients and focus on service. The elements that we have are ship management, so that's where I currently sit. So that's the marine and technical ship management across a wide range of vessels across the group, from yachts through to VLCCs, ferries, all different types of ships. So we give marine and technical support there, and certainly from a compliance point of view, that's the full technical management perspective. Crew management, so as it says there, attracting, recruiting, developing the right crew, the right seafarers, and certainly, and we can touch on it in a bit, ensuring the safe and reliable, responsible operation of all the vessels. So this is something that we are developing as well, certainly with COVID, and the things that we're going to have to put in place. And interestingly enough, a lot of the things that we're seeing from the vessels we have in a laid up situation is certainly around with the crew. They are embracing, you know, the things that are being put in place. It protects them and they understand why. And I think that's the good thing about the awareness with this pandemic is it's worldwide. Everybody knows things are going to be different. So everybody's expecting a change, and people understand that it's actually to protect them. We're talking about people's lives here. So certainly we can talk more about the crew skills and training later. So technical services in support of ship management and things that are needed. So we have crew life, cycling, new build supervisions, inspections, upgrades, repairs and maintenance through a partner company called SeaTech. We can do that. Doing services, again, supporting seafarers, ship owners, operators. Do provision of training, catering, travel services. A lot of the training, as we were talking earlier, is now done as well through e-learning and can be done in advance. And these are, again, modules that can be rolled out prior to the crew joining, along with their joining instructions and specific instructions around how what's expected of them and what go is going to mean, and do they have an appointment to get a test, and all of these things are all sent out electronically as well. We go supply chain, we have Marcas, and are able to leverage certainly from the volumes that we have. We have some good deals there and we're able to pass those on to the clients. Insurance as well, there's an offering there for various types of insurance. Certainly in the current situation within leisure, we are seeing some changes there where we've laid ships up and able to offer some benefits to clients through insurance premiums. And ShipShore, which is a marine digital platform for supporting the ship management. So that would be our planned maintenance systems and basically an operations support tool, which actually offers live, so I can see on ship anytime what's going on and what the situation on board is, and certainly from a financial perspective. And also within that package, we're able to give the client access so they can see, the ship owners can see exactly what I can see. So there's nothing hidden in that. And I think that has started to build quite a lot of trust within what we're doing. So V Leisure, is a passenger shipping industry's partner of choice. So we've supported cruise lines from startup to operation. We are resilient within the operation, a global presence in over 30 countries and cruise experts in Europe, USA and China. And I think that's one thing that certainly I've noticed in the last 3 months is we're working through teams and things like that, but we are certainly in contact more. We are all going through this together. It's the same set of issues, slightly different clientele and slightly different propositions, slightly different rules as well locally. But we have one cruise company in China that are about to start up, and we're supporting that there. From that, we're obviously learning and then feeding that in and able to pull practice and what we learn from that as well, and feed that back into other operations that we'll be starting up hopefully soon, both in Europe and the US. And we have a presence out there and feed into CLIA, CDC forums and those sorts of things out there. So experience of starting up and growing cruise and ferry lines over 25 years. We've worked with investors and financiers who need specific cruise and ferry operation consultancy. So again, that's something that in the current climate, I've been involved myself recently. We have been doing that more, and that's kind of been almost a sideline to the downturn in the cruise and the ships being laid up. There are investment opportunities and people, I think, see that. So we've been able to give some consultancy there. I think that one of the things that we do pride ourselves on a lot is the bespoke partnerships, and they are partnerships with each of our clients. So we're able to focus on delivering for their guests and the stakeholders. So the offering can be tailored and the support package is tailored to the client's needs and the guest needs, which I think certainly in this environment, everybody will be doing things slightly differently, as we were talking about. There are different, if you want, luxury levels, let's call it that, and how we support them may be slightly different. We have an unparalleled portfolio of clients. Access to partners across the industry, including shipyards and financiers. Again, this has become sort of prevalent at the current time. And we benefit from the scale, as we've already said, within the group, the parent company, and how we support, including the platform shipyards too. The company is backed by Advent International, one of the leading private equity firms, and the focus has been sustainability and working to reduce our impact, but also supporting our partners and the clients to reduce their supporting sustainability. And that continues to be a main focus moving forward. I think the services we offer, I can run through them very quickly. So ship management, ship inspections, it's operational technical support, pretty much everything you would need as a cruise line operator. And we can also assist with hotel management, including food and beverage supplies for laid up vessels, which we've been doing. A new build, supervision, entry into service, dry and wet dock management, and consultancy for cruise line startups. And a lot of what we're doing with the current situation is treating this as this is a startup. We are coming into a new era here. Things will change, and we're looking at things as a startup business and working with business partners to develop that, to understand how we come back as the industry, each operator slightly differently, but how we can support each individual one to their needs. So that's and these are some of the clients. So over 100 vessels supported by the ship leisure, and over 1,000 vessels under management within the group. So we do have a considerable share. And if there's any interest from anybody, Johansson and Alexander, so the contact details are on there, or myself, of course. We'll be happy to help if there's any further questions on that.
That's great, Julian. 10 minutes to go. If I may pose a question directly to you then. Let's say in 2 years, we will probably have abandoned, or mostly abandoned, the social distancing and wearing masks and everything that we're doing right now. And we've probably forgotten most of the COVID and Corona period, hopefully. But the only thing we really know is that there's going to be another health crisis in a few years' time. If it's 1 year or 10 years from now, we don't know. But there will be similar outbreaks of what do we know in the future. If I could ask you, and I will ask all of you very quickly to summarize, because we have 8 minutes to go, what would be your top 3 most important preventive actions? Next time this comes back, what will we have done to prevent the things that we have seen on board now in terms of spreading on board, in terms of the consequences we have seen from Corona? Top 3.
So I think the technical innovations we should have done, from air purity and things like that, will apply across a whole range of pandemics, hopefully, and the technology there will be so. We will have put processes and procedures in place that can be adapted. We already have Noro. This is a pandemic, so these will be processes and procedures that can quickly be adapted. So that's that. And we will have the digitalization, the platforms, and also the ability. We now know we have the ability to work, and the businesses are sustainable from here. I think one of the key things is recognizing it earlier and acting quickly. That's one of the keys. They would be, I think, we are setting ourselves up for a very good future. And if there is another pandemic, then hopefully we are ready to react to it, even if we have to just slightly adjust what we're doing now.
Great, thank you, Gino. Johannes, your take, your top 3 things you would do to prevent?
I think I have only one top: screening. Prevent anyone that's infected getting on board. I think this is the #1 top priority, but that requires to have rapid tests that are reliable and rapid. With Corona, as we know, it takes 2 weeks until you show symptoms, and so this is hugely challenging. And I'm not sure which rapid test at what point of the infection actually they can detect it. This is within the first day, first 2 days, first 3 days. So I think the biggest prevention we can do is make sure nobody gets on board. If it's a crew member, a guest, a visitor that's infected, and if somebody gets infected, obviously technology can help with contact tracing to identify those guests or crew members. This person was in proximity with, and isolate those. But this is already becoming a challenge. I think the biggest measure that can be done is simply make sure nobody gets on board that's affected.
Keeping sick people away. Great, thank you. Okay, Edie, over to you. Your top 3 things.
Well, I agree with Johannes. That is the #1 priority. So much so to the extent, just on Monday, I had a meeting with the company that has a rapid test, and it also tests for antibodies. So we had a very lengthy conversation about this, because you can create it at the port of embarkation, let's say. This goes back to all the operational what ifs, and when there's a great solution, what ensues in the conversation around that. So what we talked about is, if at port of embarkation, everybody gets this rapid test, crew, guests. So now you've created, okay, at port of embarkation for this 7-night sailing, 14-night sailing, whatever it is, we have the whole complement of souls on board that currently at this port of embarkation moment in time don't have it. Anybody who has had it, again, in the cruise documentation, hopefully they bought insurance, because they're not going to be allowed to board. But now the cruise is going somewhere. And even if on board you have the best cleaning measures, and to his point earlier, at that testing, they didn't have it. But what if they were in an incubation period and 2 days later they have it? Or 3 days later, we've gotten off in the port of Sorrento and everybody goes off, has a great time, comes back. Are you now retesting again? And then if you are, what happens? Do you not let them back on if they have it? What do you do to repatriate them? There are so many rules. So time will tell, testing will enhance, but definitely, if nothing else, if you can actually implement these tests, these rapid tests at port of embarkation, at least you're starting from ground zero to make a statement. In our sailing, at least at port of embarkation, nobody who has it is on board. Again, it can change in an hour the next day, but it is what it is until things get better. So that's the number one priority. The number two is, first of all, I think it's a great period of innovation for a startup to totally design from the ground up these new rules of engagement. And how do you then make this new build, this new entity, profitable with the new rules of engagement? Because all of the existing ships are laid down with the legacy of how do they get their ROI back, because they were built for X thousands of guests and only X crew. So you don't, any new type of invention, if you will, or a new cruise startup has the luxury right now of time to do it right, and to do it with a mindset of, okay, we're in a COVID world. How do I build something new, creative, sustainable, and by the way, profitable in a COVID world? But then the number three thing is always plan B. What happens if an outbreak occurs again on board? What do you do? What are the policies, procedures, and technologies to not have this vessel now stuck at sea for a month, et cetera, and go through that causal chain of what we saw back in February that ensued, leading to where the industry is today? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edie, for your wise words and your experience. And thank you, all of you, for your great input today. It's been fantastic to have such a wealth of experience with us here today. I think it's another great sign of how we can collaborate and offer our time and experience and knowledge to the industry to help it recover short and long term. So thank you all again very much. Again, all the this video will be available on YouTube shortly, and all the presentations that we've seen today will also be available. And by that, I would like to again thank you for everybody in the panel, and thank you for everybody who's been listening in today. It's been great to have you all here. We're very happy about that. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
See you.
Thank you. Bye. Wash your hands.
Stay safe, everybody, and hope to see you soon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.